Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to share with you about this topic, carbohydrates and in health and diseases. Many people didn't understand about carbohydrates. We usually misunderstood about carbohydrates, but today I wanted to share with you some evidence-based information to help you understand more about these essential food groups in our life, which is really important to help us to gain health and prevent diseases. Carbohydrate is actually play a vital role in maintaining good health, and how we actually define it, how we actually choose it is the main key things here. So I just want to let you know there are three major food groups in the for our macronutrients, which are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And in these presentations, I will only focus about carbohydrates. Since carbohydrates is our primary source of energy, it provides a lot of food to our body's activity that include sugars, starch, and fiber. So example for carbohydrates is including such as fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. What about protein? Protein is mainly for meat, fish, eggs, dairy product, beans, nuts, and seeds. While fat, you can think of oil, nuts, seeds, and some dairy products. So let us back to talk about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates is actually very important, and it actually helps us to prevent diseases. We need to prioritize the whole grain, vegetables, and fruits, and try to limit refined grains and sugar beverage. Adequate fiber intake is very crucial for our digestive health and also overall well-being. So we need to consider individual needs and preference when choosing carbohydrate sources. Some may benefit from low carbohydrates. Some may also benefit from high carbohydrates diets. So we want to see later how actually evidence-based shows all these carbohydrates diets. So remember, after the end of the sessions, you can consult a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian for your personal recommendations because everyone is different for their health. So basically, carbohydrate recommendations, we recommend that this 40 to 65% of our total daily calories should come from carbohydrates, so that to meet our energy demands and reduce the risk of non-communicable diseases. And the resources should be prioritize whole grains, at least half of the total grain consumptions, and try to limit refined grains such as donuts, white bread, all these kind of refined grains and free sugar consumption to less than 5 to 10%. And of course, this high amount of carbohydrate injections should be derived from low glycemic index source. For example, those wheat, legumes, whole grains. All this is to aim for a fiber intake higher than 20 to 30 grams per day. And this guideline ensure adequate energy levels will minimize the risk of chronic diseases. So focusing on the whole and processed sources of carbohydrates is the key to maximize our health benefits. Let's go through one by one and see the evidence. So there's a research shows for carbohydrates for athletes, how much carbohydrates should athletes take. So athletes are advised to take in up to 60 grams of fast in digesting carbohydrates. And this is during the exercise sessions lasting up to 3 hours. And most studies have used a 2:1 ratio of glucose to fructose, which become the standard. So the nearly research show that the ratio closer to 1 to 0.8 glucose to fructose may actually work better. So this improved ratio also leads to more efficient energy use and causes less stomach discomfort, even when glucose intake is below 60 grams per hour. So getting the right amount and type of carbohydrates is important for athletes. Same goes to us, but we will have lesser. It will help to keep energy level up, boost performance, and also reduce the stomach problem during long workout. So what about the general population? The WHO recommends that carbohydrate intake should consider mainly of whole grain products, vegetables, fruits, and pulses. For strong recommendations, especially for those aged 2 years and above. So the WHO recommends that adults should consume at least 25 grams of naturally occurring dietary fibers for daily. For the children 2 to 5 years old, at least 15 grams per day, and children 6 to 9 years old, at least 21 grams per day, while 10 years and above or older, at least 25 grams per day. So carbohydrates should continue to be based on the recommended intakes of protein about 10 to 15%, and fats is less than 30%. Carbohydrate intake of approximately 40 to 70 of total energy intake is associated with a lower risk of death than lower or higher. So this value is largely consistent with the total carbohydrate intake derived from the current WHO recommendations on protein intake and the updated guideline on total fat intake. What about the carbohydrate quality? As the research shows that people have different needs and preferences. So some may do better with a low carbohydrate diet, especially when they replace carbs with healthy fats and plant-based proteins. Others may do well with a high carbohydrate diet as long as it focuses on high-quality carbs like whole grains, especially oats and barley, legume, fruits, foods with low glycemic index, and higher fiber options. So studies also reveal that strong evidence shows that high quality carbohydrates can improve heart and metabolic health. They also will help with weight loss and lower risk of diabetes, heart disease, and death from heart-related conditions. So when it comes to sugars, the impact depends on the amount and the food source. Sugary drinks, that is the add extra calories, are linked to negative health effects. But foods that naturally contain sugars like fruits, 100% fruit juice, yogurt, and high fiber whole grain cereals that can be healthy when they replace low quality carbs. Okay? In short, the type of carbohydrates you eat is just important as how much you eat. Choosing the whole natural foods over sugary drinks definitely can help make a big difference in your health. So come to the gut health. Carbohydrate is very important and it can not only help obesity, and it also will help to improve our balanced bacteria in our gut, our GI system. So they actually support the growth of good bacteria and help to reduce the harmful ones. When it comes to relieving constipation, diarrhea, the way carbohydrates can affect the gut depends on the person and how much is it intake. So you can see the research shows that carbohydrates will influence gut health by promoting a balanced microbial community and also help with release constipations. So far, various carbohydrates have been proved to suppress growth of tumor cells. Similarly, prebiotic-resistant starch was also shown to add a supportive approach to enhance the therapeutic effect on pancreatic cancer by modulating the dysregulated gene expressions and also the metabolic profile. In a hospital-based case control study, the consumption of the resistant starch-containing foods was also positively related to breast cancer. Now, research findings based on a series of systematic reviews and meta-analysis provide convincing evidence for the importance of including advice regarding the natures and source of other carbohydrates in dietary guidelines. This is to aim reduce the non-communicable diseases. So you can see higher intakes of dietary fiber and whole grains are more clearly associated with good health outcomes than the measure of glycemic index and glycemic load. You can see our Malaysia food pyramid as a whole measure choices full of vegetables and also fruits and whole grains carbs. So what about the impacts of carbohydrate and metabolic diseases? So coming this session, I will relate some evidence proof for carbohydrate together with diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, chronic kidney failure, and some of the cancers. We will see what are the types that suitable and will affect them, especially these kind of patients. So carbohydrate restrictions and metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome means that they have 5 highs. 3 out of 5, you already consider you have metabolic syndrome. That 5 including you have high abdominal fat, okay, waist circumference is very big, okay, and is that normal? You have high glucose, high blood pressure, high lipids, your triglyceride, and you have low HDL, the good lipid, you don't have a very good numbers. So these are the metabolic syndrome. So this research show that carbohydrate restrict is actually causing a very low carbohydrate, means the low carbohydrate intake will lead to improvement of the metabolic syndrome. Okay, and let's see. So this metabolic syndrome is also a pathology stage that will cause us to have carbohydrate intolerance. So dietary carbohydrate proportion significantly can regulate intravascular lipid metabolism, and of course, independent of total calories and net lipolysis with obesity and metabolic syndrome. So you can see low carbohydrate diets, they have their own benefits, but they can be very effective for weight control for a short term of period of time. It can be healthier when we done with a good quality foods, okay, for those who have metabolic syndrome. However, this is research. Some of the research shows that it won't stick to a long time for people who go for a low carbohydrate diet because it's very difficult for them. And of course, when you have low carbohydrate, you might have high protein or high fats that will cause you another problem. So this kind of diet may put extra stress on the kidneys and also may be hard for the bodies to follow for a long term of time. But it is good that it can actually help to lose weight at the critical moments. Okay, so you can see some of the research also, the clinical trial shows that it indicate moderately restricted carbohydrate diet resulted in a significant improvement in some of the weight, like just I mentioned, the weight, BMI, waist circumference, hip circumference, compared to normal weight loss diet. Okay, so this moderate restricted carbohydrate diet, okay, is actually can help to reduce weight. And research also found that low carbohydrate diet can have improvement in metabolic syndrome indicators. For example, the weight, body fat, rather than the low-fat diet, compared with the low-fat diet. So patients follow this diet, they have lower serum of triglyceride levels and also improve their HDL level. Okay, so what about the impact of fructose and glucose, the sugars? Okay, and very interesting experiment was done with mice. Okay, they were fed different diets with different amounts of fructose, glucose. Okay, those mice fit for 50 and 50 fructose, 50 glucose is actually this ratio same with a high fructose corn syrup. Okay, this group of mice have the worst metabolic health. And this is really surprised that this kind of high fructose corn syrup can actually have worse health effect compared to sucrose. Okay, we compare among the sugars. All right, which the sucrose also is made from the same two sugars. Okay, another study shows the mice given low protein to carbohydrate and high carbohydrates with different protein and carbohydrate ratio. And this, once the protein level decrease, the starch intake reduce, and then the mice metabolic health improve. Replacing starch with sucrose didn't cause any harm. But when the easily digested starch was replaced with a type of starch that can be digested by the gut bacteria, we call it resistant starch, the mice health is actually dramatically improved and their gut microbiome changed for the better. All right, the best result was seen when resistant starch was the main carbohydrates in the diet, followed by sucrose and normal starch, but not the high fructose corn syrup. That was very bad one. So what about the carbohydrate intake and cardiovascular diseases? The metabolic analysis research shows that individuals with highest carbohydrate intake had a 1 to 1.1 to 15 fold increased risk of cardiovascular diseases compared to those with the lowest intake. So high carbohydrate intake, particularly over 60 of total energy from carbohydrate, can have adverse effects on the incidence of cardiovascular diseases, with a stronger risk associated with Asians with a carbohydrate-based diet and weaker insulin sensitivity. So this finding suggests that a carbohydrate-based diet, which is high in proportion to the energy intake, may increase the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Okay, and is really dangerous for the population, especially Asian. So we can actually find that heavily rely on refined white rice. We usually in our plate full of white rice for Asian. This can lead to an imbalance of macronutrients and a lower consumptions of milk and dairy products. Means we choose white rice, but we ignore the rest because after you consume the white rice, you get it full. Okay, so this eating too much of white rice can cause this effect, and if you have this high intake of carbohydrates, which also will cause serious heart problems. Okay, and this heart problem, we call it the major adverse cardiovascular events, or we call it MSCE. So in contrast, if you eat more healthy fats like polyunsaturated fatty acid, okay, that's a healthy fat, it actually has lower risk of the problems. In fact, if you replace with not so good carbohydrate with the good protein and fat, it will help. Okay, but it's only will help when you choose the good quality one to prevent the cardiovascular diseases. Okay, if you you remove the refined grains, means the not good one, the carbs, with fruits, vegetables, or dairy products, it also will lower down the risk of heart problems. So replacing this will help reduce heart disease, and also not just because of the vegetable themselves, but also the healthy oils that we use in the cooking. Okay, and the other PUFA, we call it polysaturated fatty acid. This kind of PUFA is actually rich in foods such as fish, chickens, and soy. This also will link to a lower risk if we choose the good one, but the result will not so strong from the research. So the link with the high carbs intake and the heart risk is actually stronger in women than men. This could be the high GI food affect the woman's blood fats more, possibly because of the hormone. Okay, so you can choose for high carbs, but it is advised to choose the high quality unrefined carbs source. Okay, so you can see also the research found the mortality risk was higher, and when the carbs intake, the not good carbs intake increased, and further investigation also show higher sugar intake was associated with a higher mortality risk. Okay, the research also found that replacing the carbohydrate intake with protein, including animal and plant, polysaturated fat, a good fat, and plant fat reduce the mortality rate. Similarly, so sugar, replacing sugar intake with non-sugar carbohydrates, protein, polyunsaturated fat, and plant fat can reduce the mortality risk. So come to the kidney. All right. So study relate with dietary carbohydrates and kidney. It can actually found higher dietary carbohydrate density is associated with increased risk of chronic kidney diseases. Okay, and in fact, the study shows eating as low as 20 to 50 grams of carbs per day without causing kidney disease. But it also appears as safe as effective for those with diabetic kidney problems. But this kind of very low carbohydrates the diet not only can help with the significant weight loss, but also help to reduce visceral fat for those kidney problem patients. Additionally, the fasting blood sugar and HbA1c will improve. However, I must highlight here that the protein is actually plant-based protein, like beans and all, eggs, nuts, seeds, and the unrefined carbs is like grains, legume, vegetables, and fruits. Okay, then only you can go for these very low carbs for those who have kidney problems. Now come to carbohydrates that what kind of carbohydrates diet will cause mortality and chronic diseases. This will talk about some of the vegetarian diets and also how actually we consider food sources for our optimum health outcomes. So you can see some of the research shows that eating more carbs compared to fiber, okay, was linked to higher risk of death. Okay, if you choose only carb but not fiber. But if you replace the refined the unrefined or not good carbs with fats and protein from the plant sources, okay, is linked to lower risk of death overall for heart diseases. Okay, but if you replace with the animal-based fats and protein, that did not show the same benefit. Okay, so when looking at the different amounts of carbohydrates intake, the risk of death follow a U shape, meaning that very low or very high carbs intake might be risky, while the lowest death risk was when the carbs make up about 50% of our total energy intake. So, however, the study couldn't completely rule out whether these effects are influenced by the type of protein or fat people were eating, especially from animal source. But research shows that the fiber from cereals and vegetables was inversely associated with death risk, while no association was found for fiber intake from fruits and legumes. Okay, And the study also shows that the total carbohydrate intake, including sugar, had a direct linear relationship with cardiovascular diseases risk. But we can replace the sugar with starch, MUFA. MUFA means the monosaturated fatty acid, or protein is linked to lower risk of death and heart diseases, especially when the initial intake of starch, MUFA, and protein was low. Different type of carbohydrates had different effects on health. Okay, so that's why suggesting that dietary guidelines should consider varying impacts of sugars and starch on health outcomes. Well, the low carb diets, another study also shows that especially one in high protein could have negative effects on overall mortality. So not to reduce your carbs intake extremely, and then you get all the high protein and high fat, that is very dangerous. Okay, you will increase your heart risk of heart disease, stroke, and cancer-related death. And additionally, long-term low-carb diets also will link to a higher risk of stroke-related deaths. The connection between low-carb diets and higher mortality was stronger in non-obese individuals than in those who were obese. So if you are a normal person with normal BMI, please go for normal recommendations carbs diets, okay? Unless you're overweight and obese and you try to lose weight. So some potential mechanisms that may mediate the unfavorable impact of low carbohydrates diet on health, it may help, but it will also bring a very negative impact to health, because when you go for low carbs diets, you might have the high chance to reduce your intakes of fibers and fruits, and you might getting high chance to increase the intake of animal protein, cholesterol, and saturated fat. So come to the vegetarian diet research. So a lot of research shows that being a low meat eater, fish eaters, or vegetarians was associated with a lower risk of all cancer sites when compared to regular meat eaters, and a lower risk of postmenopause, post breast cancer risk in vegetarian women, and a lower risk of prostate cancer among vegetarian men. Then the lower risk of post cancer in vegetarian, because probably they have lower BMI, okay, and also those lower circulating insulin risk, like growth factors and concentration. While plant-based diet, such as vegan, vegetarian diet, and the food other food patterns that very useful in the treatments and in the prevention of metabolic syndrome. In fact, these plant-based diets and vegan diet can play a protective roles through the different dietary properties, such as ISO, low calorie intake. It can help with the low saturated fatty acid level. It can help with the higher fiber content. You have high chance to eat more vegetables and fruits. It can also eliminate and reduce the mix. Among the healthy adults in the general population, vegetarian diets and vegan dietary patterns were associated with lower cardiovascular diseases and these cardiovascular diseases and cardiac heart diseases. Okay, and of course the risk of the cardiovascular diseases mortality is lower compared to those non-vegetarian dietary pattern. So vegan diet also associated with mitigated cardiovascular disease risk, such as they can lower the blood pressure, LDL, triglyceride, CRP, and BMI when compared to non-vegetarian diet pattern. And for all vegetarian diets, the certainty of evidence for cardiovascular disease and cardiac heart disease incidence is moderate for vegan diet. and it has a low certainty of evidence for all these kind of diseases. So come to conclusions. The key takeaway from my sharing today is these four things. The carb restriction can bring benefits if you restrict those refined carbs. Yeah, refined carbs means they're not good carbohydrates. Okay, if you restrict it, it can help to improve metabolic syndrome. It can help with the weight loss and some of the non-communicable diseases. But whether you reduce or you increase, you must remember quality matters. The type and the source of the carbohydrates very significantly impact our well-being and health. While protein replacement, you can replace refined carbs with plant-based protein and those good fats. It can help to reduce mortality risk, yes, but remember the risk of this choosing high protein and high fat is high, because if you are able to do so, try to choose those high quality of carbs, proteins, and fats. And last but not least, plant-based diets are highly recommended for a well-balanced well-being in our daily life. Okay, it's very good for our health. And don't forget, if you have any health issues or you're facing any problems with your health, and you want to change through your lifestyle, your diet, please consult a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian or a nutritionist to determine the best dietary approach for your individual needs. That's all for my presentations. I have this sharing cooking demo for you. Jumbo cinnamon roll recipe. This is a carbohydrate recipe sharing. It's only for carbohydrates. It's not for balance, but only try to let you know what are the carbohydrates that you can, healthy carbohydrates that you can take. All right. So I'm going to show you this in a short while. This is my references. So any questions, please let us know. I can try to answer. That's all. Thank you.